Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Madeline No, and I want to welcome you to another NetHope Solution Center webinar. Today, we are talking about digital transformation at the Salvation Army, CRM, analytics, and process. And of course, we're welcoming representatives from the Salvation Army and Heller Consulting today to speak to us. Before we get started, though, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping guidelines for our session today. We'd like to keep this interactive, so please do post your questions and comments in the Zoom chat window for our Q&A and discussion later in the hour. We also will provide you with a follow-up email that will include a link to the landing page for this webinar that will have the recording embedded and any other resources that might be helpful to you. Also, we would appreciate your feedback. After the session today, a webinar satisfaction survey will pop up in a new window. We would appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to complete that and give us your feedback. It's very important so that we can make these sessions better every time. And with that, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. We have Chad Kersey, Senior Director of Strategy and Outcomes from the Salvation Army Central Territory, and Keith Heller, Founder and Chief Strategist from Heller Consulting. And with that, I will hand it off to Chad and Keith to introduce themselves a little bit more and get our session started for today. Chad and Keith.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. We do appreciate it, and we look forward to spending a little bit of time just talking to you about the digital transformation and work that we've been doing over the past few years within the Salvation Army. To tell you just a little bit about myself, my role is Senior Director of Strategy and Outcomes for our Central Territory within the United States, arm of the Salvation Army. And I have been with the Salvation Army now for just a little over 3 years and have worked in the nonprofit sector for pretty much the entirety of my career through consulting, as well as directly in operations management and analytics type roles for various different nonprofit organizations. So really thankful for the opportunity to be here and to share with you today what we've been working on. So I'll turn it over to Keith here now.
Thanks, Chad, and thanks, everyone. Really excited to be here today. Nothing better at 8 a.m. than talking about digital transformation. Let's see. Heller Consulting, we're a team of about 30 folks around the country. We help with strategy, what kind of systems should you select, what's going to be best for your organization. I think that's a bit of the work we've done with Chad, and he'll talk about that today. We also help people implement Salesforce, Microsoft, CRMs, and a lot of digital tools. So, and change management. Anytime you make a change like this, there's a lot of feelings people have about this. So we like to walk people through gently through a change like this. This has been the entirety of my career. This is actually this month, our 25th anniversary. We have nice little mugs with our 25th anniversary. So as a special, if any of you need some one-on-one help with Razor's Edge for DOS, I am your guy. I'm a little rusty, but I can see what I can do. So with that, we want to get started. And Chad, you guys have had such an exciting project. Big organization, lots of levels, lots of limbs, and big goals to kind of throw your arms around all that and put in place an infrastructure that will allow you to really serve your constituents, reach out to your supporters. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over and take us through it.
All right. Well, Keith, thank you so much for that. And we do appreciate the support from Heller and the team there as we've gone through this transformation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll walk through a little bit of a PowerPoint deck here. And let's get into full screen mode and back to the beginning. All right. So I wanted to start just by sharing a little bit about the organizational structure of the Salvation Army. And as Keith said, we have been going through a transformation of our applications and processes and various different systems that we utilize now for a few years, and beginning to analyze the ways in which we can make improvements, better care for our constituency, and ensure that we are doing the most efficient, most effective as we possibly can within our business operations. So the Salvation Army is comprised of multiple different 501c3 organizations across the globe. And within the United States, we have a national headquarters that's based out of Alexandria, Virginia, and rolls up into the overall corporate structure of the Salvation Army, which is headquartered out of our offices in London. Within the US, we also have 4 territorial headquarters that are geographically based in 4 different regions throughout the US. We have one in New York, one in Illinois, one in Georgia, and another in California. And these 4 territories, along with the national headquarters, make up the United States operations for the Salvation Army as a whole. And each of these entities are their own corporation. And so we have a lot of autonomy within the ways in which we manage our data and the ways in which we manage our business processes. But at the same time, we do have governance structures set up that are managed and maintained by our national office and our international offices, so that we have those protocols in place so that we're all consistent, delivering a quality brand experience that is consistent across all of our channels and all of our various different organizational entities. Within our 4 different territories, each territory is comprised of a set of divisional headquarter offices that are based in different states and have geographic assignments and regions that they are responsible for managing and overseeing the operations and giving guidance to and ensuring adherence to international, national, and territorial policies. And then within those divisions, there are local offices. And the Salvation Army within the United States has approximately just under 8,000 local offices and service centers that are spread out all across the US, and have the opportunity for the staff and the officers of our organization to be involved in the local community where the need is most relevant. And so we're living there. We're part of the community, part of the experience of the day-to-day activities and life of the people in the communities in which we serve, and are just so thankful for the opportunity to have the individuals that care about and love and are so concerned about the community that they live in, and have the opportunity to serve them there. So we're very much a organization that is grassroots in its services, grassroots in the way in which we do our fundraising and activities, and yet at the same time we have this corporate hierarchy that we're trying to support and build and grow. And so there's a few challenges that has presented to us as we have worked through our journey and through our story over the past few years. So I just wanted to give just a little bit of the story of where we've been, some things that we're doing now, and where we're hoping to go in the future. And so this slide here just gives an overview that with that autonomous structure and the ability for local units to make decisions as to what is most needed in their local community, and with the divisions having the authority and the ability to run business processes and systems for those local units, it has created a decentralized technology structure that has presented challenges for us. And as we started looking at that back in about 2015, an initiative was kicked off to start looking at our territorial and divisional data, and begin to understand how can we bring things together so that we have a better understanding, a more comprehensive view of our donors and our constituency, our volunteers, and the individuals that make this organization thrive. How can we continue to build upon the information that we have today, but bring it together in a way so that we can see if an individual is engaging with the organization at a local unit, but then maybe also has been interacting online, we didn't have a good way of seeing the activity of that donor slash volunteer, slash community engagement within our systems holistically. So we were very dependent upon anytime we needed data, our national office would make a request to the territory would make a request to the division would make a request to the local offices, and then all of this data would be assimilated, collected, analyzed, put together in basically spreadsheets that would then flow back up that same chain that the request came down through. And so as we began to explore that, we said, you know what, we need to begin looking at a centralized CRM system for our territory so that each territory has a CRM that they're maintaining, managing, seeing all the interactions, the activities, the donations, the volunteer opportunities and records that are there so that we can consolidate. And so in 2018, the Central Territory went live with its CRM system and took 10 different divisional CRM applications that were being utilized and consolidated them into a single CRM application at the territorial level. So that kind of takes us up to that next level box there, where we began to pull information together. But what we found was that this was great, and we started seeing more information, and we even today still realize that we don't have everything that we want inside of that, and that's a continual growth opportunity and something that we continue to explore and expand over time. But at the same time, we realized that there were a lot of business processes that define data that were not yet fully defined, not fully in place. So we were getting information into the CRM system that may mean one thing to us at the territorial level, but may mean something different to the division that was inputting that information. And maybe another division was inputting information into the same field inside our CRM that the territory was interpreting one way, and that division was interpreting it completely different than another division. So our business processes needed to be aligned in such a way that the organization could operate in a manner that is consistent within its data management functions, within its business process functions, and ultimately within its reporting and analytics functions so that we can make wise decisions going forward. And so we've continued to make steps and progress within our CRM applications over the course of the past 3 to 4 years now that we've had them in place. And each of our 4 territories have been going through processes to try and establish data standardization, normalization of our data, to identify ways in which we could continue to improve the data, the information, the reporting, and analytics that are derived from the various different CRM systems that the territories now manage. So today we're at a point where we have 4 territorial CRM applications that are in place, collecting our donor information from all of our divisions, all of our local units across the United States, and rolling that information up. Recently, we started looking and having conversations at a national level. So our national headquarters is responsible for the implementation, the contract, and the management of our digital application. And so all of our online transactions are going through our national office and then being routed, and the funds are being transferred down to the appropriate unit so that all of the funds raised and collected throughout that process still stay local to the unit in which the individual donor lives. So we always want the community that someone lives within to be supported as a result of their partnership with the Salvation Army. And as we began to explore the digital application and putting that in place and getting some great new functionality, we realized, this isn't complete. We have a good view of how donors are engaging and interacting with us on the national level within our digital platform now, but we do not yet have a comprehensive way of viewing their volunteer activity. We do not have a way of communicating and understanding how they are engaging with us from a donation perspective, and getting information into the system so that it's not just combined with our digital donation and digital tracking, but also looking at their offline giving through direct mail channels, or maybe they are working directly with a local office and decide, hey, you know what, I really want to support this community and I want to support an effort that is going on within this office, and they'll write a check out and hand it to the local office. And while those funds were being maintained and managed well within our CRM application, they weren't necessarily being tied together and brought to a holistic picture organizationally at the national level. So a committee was formed back in the beginning of 2020. We launched a committee for the purposes of assessing our data from a national perspective. And initially, the thought process was that this committee would be commissioned for the purposes of implementing a singular CRM system for the Salvation Army to implement across all of our territorial and national data sets, and have everyone feeding data and rolling up into a singular CRM. And while that sounds great and is probably a long-term goal that we want to achieve, as we met as a committee, we began to explore and talk about the possibilities of this, and we recognized each of our territories were still at different levels of implementation. We were still trying to get full integration and information into our CRM systems, where maybe some territories were collecting and gathering information from our local thrift store, the Salvation Army thrift stores that exist. They may have been gathering the donor information and collecting all of those in-kind gift records and placing them inside their CRM. Well, when we talked with the other territories were saying, no, we're not there yet. We're not at that level. We're working toward that, but we're not ready to do that just yet. And as we began to explore and assess, we said, you know what? For us all to go to a singular CRM today would be a massive lift for the organization and for us as a team. And we don't know that that's the right first step for us. So incrementally, what if we explored some other options? And so we began to discuss the possibility of bringing together all 4 territorial data sets and the data sets that exist at our national office that are not stored inside a CRM system, and bring that all together in a consolidated way through a national data warehouse, data mart, data lake. We didn't really know. We just began, tossing out ideas and concepts and terms and saying, all right, guys, what will work? What do we want to do? And how do we achieve this? And ultimately, does this help us still achieve that long-term goal of moving toward a centralized application that manages our data and information? So as a result of that, we were commissioned with a set of goals that we kind of came out of that initial discussion and said, here's what we want to achieve as a result of this committee and the work that we're doing here. We want to improve the customer service, and we want a good quality experience for our donors and our volunteers and those that interact and engage with the Salvation Army. It is our desire to serve them well and to know that the funds they're giving and the time that they give volunteering is ultimately going to a great cause and great purpose, and that we're managing it wisely within the business processes and within our internal systems. We were experiencing as we began to look at our data, we said, hey, you know what? We have donors that are giving to not just the Central Territory, but they're also giving to the Southern Territory, because maybe they live in the Chicago area for 6 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year, and then come winter time, they move down to Florida to a vacation home for a period of time. And we realized that we had donors that existed in multiple CRMs throughout our organization. Well, how are we going to address this? And we wanted to be able to identify and deduplicate those donors and ensure that we have a holistic view of how they're engaging with our organization. The third area that we started exploring and looked at was the metrics and reporting. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we really wanted to have a holistic data set that would allow us to quickly and easily assess our performance and for us to know where we are in our processes, where we are in our objectives and goals, our fundraising activities. How are we performing? How are we doing? And that helps us inform if we need to change strategies or if we need to implement some different processes that would improve or change course for, to achieve some of the goals that we may have for the year. The next one that we were looking at is security and privacy. And I think we're all aware of the fact that privacy is becoming more and more and more important as we hear what's going on within the news, as we hear what's going on within our world. We have many states now that are beginning to implement privacy policies and law that now nonprofit organizations need to start abiding by as well. Initially, we had California implement, we had New York implement, and they weren't specific to nonprofits. Well, then we started hearing about, well, there's now a law that's going to be proposed within Colorado that would be specific to nonprofit organizations. And so as we began to assess that, we realized we need to have a way in which to manage our donors to ensure that we're abiding by all privacy laws and security laws that are there. And then also the ability for us to see everywhere that a donor, volunteer, or individual may exist within our data set, so that if they make a request to be removed from a mailing list, or if they make a request to be removed from our database, we can with confidence say, we know now everywhere that you exist within our data, and we can ensure that you're removed according to your request, according to applicable law. Helping us then with decision making was another goal, so that we had that comprehensive view so that we could begin to see what is one territory doing that maybe is being successful within a community that would mirror the activities of another community within a separate territory. And we don't have that visibility today. So we're excited about the opportunity to bring our data together, to begin learning from one another even more, and seeing the opportunities that exist with cross collaboration between our territorial units, and hopefully continuing to build upon those collaborative efforts to make better decisions, to be more targeted and granular in the way in which we're communicating with our donors, was another goal of this team. And then ultimately to continue to improve our marketing, our fundraising, to ensure that the quality experience is there. So overall, what are we trying to do? We want a connected donor experience. So whether we're meeting with an individual face-to-face, whether we're doing it through digital marketing channels or over the phone, through voice phone conversations, direct mail, social media platforms, we want the ability to communicate with a donor where they are and to have a consistent, uniform message that isn't disjointed between each of these various different channels of communication. So our desire obviously is to continue to build, grow, and maintain relationships with our constituency, but at the same time to be able to communicate to them through any of these channels that they prefer in a way that is consistent with the message that they may be getting through the digital channel, or that they may be getting through a social media channel. As a result of our committee work, we established some outcomes that were the end goal. What is it that we, at the end of this, what do we want to see implemented and have in place? So we want to have a single source of truth for our donors, for our volunteers. We want to improve our analytics. We want to develop great reporting and ways in which we can disseminate information to all levels of the organization quickly and efficiently. We want to create donor journeys through both digital channels that we have today, but also through direct marketing channels. And we want those digital and direct marketing channels to be coordinated and to communicate with one another in a way so that it's cohesive, and that the experience from the donor perspective is not confusing or disjointed in any way. We want to increase our cross-territorial collaboration and marketing, like I already spoke to. We want to establish a deduplicated view of all constituents within our data set across any of our divisional, local, territorial, national data. We want to be able to see holistically how a donor is engaging. And one of the challenges that we had was if an individual gave to the Central Territory and that same individual also gave to another territory at the year-end tax receiving time, how is it that we are able to summarize and provide a tax summary for the year? Because we only had information pertinent to our specific territory. So one of our goals is to be able to deduplicate those donors across the multiple territorial data sets and be able to provide a comprehensive summary of activity and donations at the end of each year. We want to develop a mapping tool that allows us to quickly, efficiently, and in an automated fashion direct donations and funds to the appropriate location based on the donor zip code of where they live. We also want the ability for donors to give to areas outside of where they live. So we're developing the framework and the processes and designing our systems in a way that give that flexibility for the donor to give where they want, or for it to flow directly back to their community if it's not designated somewhere else. We also want to improve our business processes and ensure that our fund management processes are best in class and that everything is flowing efficiently and in a timely manner so that the funds arrive at the local unit quickly so that they can respond to the need in the community that's there. So this committee that I talked about that was formed in 2020, what we did is we pulled together representatives from all over our organization throughout each of our territories. We also have divisional level representation that we brought into the discussions. And we had a variety of disciplines within this team. We have individuals that have years of experience within marketing, others that have a lot of experience in data management, application design. We have some individuals that are very process oriented and understand how the business functions and what the day-to-day activities are. And that's been valuable to us as we learn and explore at that level. We've got others that are very analytical in nature and understand what the analytics needs are for the organization and how we need to roll that up in a way that can be valuable at a broader level, national level within the organization. And then finally, those that have the experience directly within our CRM systems. And given the fact that we're not all on the same platform or the same ecosystem today, having that multidisciplinary approach has been valuable of understanding and knowing what our CRMs are. We started looking at all this. Okay, this is a lot to achieve. How are we as a committee of 12 people going to accomplish all of this activity and achieve all of these goals? And we realized that we needed a partner. And so we partnered with Heller Consulting to come alongside our committee and to begin working with us and assisting us in the strategic planning process and in implementing some of the specific details that we needed to as we were going through. And Keith is going to speak here in a minute to some of the details of that. But before we get there, I just wanted to show you a little bit of a data model that we're dealing with today. So this is a view of each of our territories have a data model that looks similar to this. We've got data coming from sources all over multiple different systems and trying to find a way to integrate all of that information into our respective territorial CRM applications. And as we've done that, we've made a lot of progress, and that incremental progress has been good, but we have such a long way to go to achieve the ultimate objectives and goals that we have in place. But we have experienced some challenges, and some of those challenges that this ecosystem provides to us today are the corporate partnerships is one of the biggest things that we've seen. We have a lot of organizations that want to engage with the Salvation Army, and they want to engage at a broad scale, not just a local scale. But with our data model and the way that it is, we haven't been able to provide consistent analytics and reporting to our corporate partners to be able to say, here's the ways in which you could engage with us that maybe crosses those various different territorial boundaries. Because if you're a national corporation and you have exposure in, let's say 48 of the 50 states across the United States, or all 50 even, then we were allowing in some ways our boundaries our artificial territorial boundaries that were set up to dictate how you as a corporate partner could engage with us. And we're wanting to break down those barriers and those boundaries by bringing and consolidating that data together in a way that we can provide a better experience for our corporate partners and donors as well, and that they could engage with us on a broader level. All right. And then you can see here a list of a few other challenges that we are experiencing and have in place. And I've already mentioned a few of these as well. But I want to stop for just a second and just Kaya, if you would, just let me know, are there any questions up to this point that we have received within the chat or anything that we need to address? And then we'll move on.
Yes, thanks, Chad. We did have a question pop in relevant to this slide saying, what AWS data warehouse service are you using if you're comfortable sharing?
Sure, absolutely. So we're using a couple of different solutions right now, depending on which territory is being referenced. So within our central territory, we're set up with Redshift today, and our we have a partner that is managing and maintaining that data warehouse for us in our current structure. And then we have our Southern Territory is using AWS, but they're using a different service within the AWS platform, and they're managing and maintaining that internally within their team and the support staff that they have in place. We have two other territories that have light data warehouse solution, one of which is locally hosted. And we have another one that has basically a SQL server that's been set up that's replicating a little bit of data, but isn't a comprehensive data set of all of their interactions. So we're working toward that. We're talking about each of our territories to better understand how we want to manage data warehousing going forward. And what you're going to see as we get into the solution slides is the possibility for us to begin working together across all of our corporate entities to better manage our data, to better manage our data warehouse solutions as well. All right. Kaya, were there any others that we need to address?
Yeah, let's do one more that I think is good before we move on. Interested to know more about your data cleaning and deduplication. I can imagine it was very challenging, for example, where you have one donor with more than one address.
Yes, absolutely. And we have engaged at a territorial level today with a national data aggregator that we're working together with them for the purposes of assisting us in that process, because it's not something that we felt comfortable trying to build internally. And part of our solution, and I'll speak to this in our solution slide as well, is how we're looking at using that partner for the purposes of deduplicating and bringing together that data when we have an individual who resides across those territorial lines as well. So I'll speak to that a little more as we move forward, but that's a great question. All right, well, Keith, I'm going to ask you to join back in with us here a little bit, if you don't mind, and just kind of walk us through some of the things that the Heller team has done in partnership with the Salvation Army as we've been going through this process.
Great, thanks, Chad. And I have to say, you know, of course, I know your story, and every time I hear it, I'm like, wow, that's a big story. You have a lot that you're trying to hold, and I think it's really impressive. So, folks, here's the overview of the process that we went through with Salvation Army. I would love to tell you that we have a lot of secrets in our process, and we do it really differently. And if you looked at our peers, they would have different kinds of slides, and ours are better. But it's not the slide that maybe differentiates. And so maybe I'll start by just saying a couple of the ways that we approach this work that we think is helpful. And when you look at taking the prior slide that Chaz was showing, which is the scary slide, the before slide, and you think, what do we want our technology infrastructure to look like in the future? For us, we look at this, and the first thing we talk about with our clients, and we talked about with Salvation Army, is this is not actually a technology project. It looks like a technology project, but it's a strategy project. And you could see from the goals that Chad shared, the desired outcomes are not, let's get new technology. The desired outcomes are, how are we going to carry out the mission of the Salvation Army more effectively? Right? How are we going to deliver our services? How are we going to engage with our clients / constituents? And then how are we going to engage with our supporters, right? Our donors and our volunteers in particular. And so taking that bigger picture into account when you go through this process changes the process a bit. It changes the questions that you ask. That we as consultants ask our clients, but then the client asks itself internally. The other piece is change management. So when you know, with that scary slide, it's not difficult to get people in a room to say, that doesn't look good. This is confusing to us. It's hard for us to do our work day to day. Nobody looks at that and says, yeah, we'd like that to stay the way it is. But then when you dig in and you say, okay, well, then we're going to change things. Then people go, wait a minute, change? Well, I think it would be great if everyone else changed, but I'm going to keep my system the way it is. And so engaging people in seeing the big picture and feeling comfortable with change. You know, we have to deal with change all the time. It's a lot easier if we do it gradually, and if the people who are supporting the change are kind about it. That doesn't mean we don't, in the end, we don't say, yeah, you got to change. But there are ways to go about these kinds of changes. There are better and worse ones, more effective and less effective. So then if you look at the process, when we go through discovery, which is, hey, what's going on here? What's your current situation? What's working? What's not? User stories. How do you use your current system? What do you do? Not what are the features, but when you sit down every day, how do you go about using your system? What works and what doesn't? And then start to look at, okay, well, you know, what do you need moving forward from a strategy perspective first? And then from a, okay, I need to be able to do A, B, C. Then you can start to look at vendors and stuff. And that first half of that process is conversation intensive. And part of the reason is because we're trying to understand what are your goals and what technology might support that. Part of it is people need to talk. They need to be able to express not only this is what I do, but this is what I'm excited about, and this is what I'm nervous about. And it's not that we would say, well, we're going to guarantee you're not going to be nervous and you're not going to be unhappy with the results, and you know, it is all going to be nice and easy. But when people get a chance to express all of that, and this is really kind of getting into almost like technology therapy, you know, then when we introduce the changes later and we say, oh, these are the vendors we've decided upon, you know, people know, well, okay, I was heard, you know, and of course, you know, we've been doing this work for, like I said, a couple of decades. We've worked with hundreds of clients, NetHope organizations as well, Chronicle 400. I could feel overly prideful and say, oh yeah, you know, you show me that slide, I'll tell you what you need to do. We don't need to talk to anybody. But the fact is, every organization is legitimately different in what they need and how they need to go about it. So this process also brings out, you know, builds on the experience across many organizations, but at the same time honors the uniqueness of your own organization. So this is the process that we've been using with Chad and the team, and I think it's going pretty well. But that's for Chad to say. So Chad, I'll let you I'll turn it back over to you, and please share more of the journey with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for that, Keith. And you're absolutely right. This truly is a strategy project that we're undertaking. And Heller has really helped us as we've gone through and been there for the RFI process, the RFP process, and helping us assess and analyze and what types of tools do we need in order to adequately and consistently evaluate the vendors that are available to us. And so that has been extremely helpful as we've gone through this journey. And so let's talk a little bit about where are we going? What is this journey? What is it ultimately going to result in? And the objective here is that we continue to build and grow our CRM data sources at each of our territorial and national levels. And so on the left-hand side, what we're looking at is the territorial instances of our CRM applications. Now, as I stated before, we're still not at a point where all 4 territories and our national office has everything flowing into a CRM system. As a matter of fact, our national office does not even have a CRM system today. We're exploring that for them at this point in time as well. But we're starting to identify where are the areas that are still missing. How can we bring that data in so that we have a comprehensive view territorially? But that doesn't achieve the overall objective and the goals that we've outlined so far throughout today's presentation. So we recognized that we needed a solution that would take all of that data from the various different sources on the left and move it to a ultimate location on the right. But we needed something in the middle to help us do that. And so Heller has been guiding us through the process here of a vendor selection process that we've evaluated multiple different cloud-based data integration and ETL solution providers. And we went through an extensive RFI, RFP process, narrowed it down, went through demos and Q&A sessions with each of those potential providers, and have made our selection at this point and are in the processes of getting our final approvals and everything based on the committee's recommendations that are going back up to the national and territorial executive leadership teams for final approvals at this point. So that has been something that took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of collaboration with multiple different levels of the organization so that we could fully understand what we were wanting to achieve and fully understand all of the technical and even business process non-technical pieces that contribute to it, and how is this ETL solution ultimately going to work, and what needs to be delivered within it. Once we decided on that ETL solution, then it was time to make a decision on where is this data going to go? How are we going to cleanse it? How are we going to create the append processes? And then ultimately, how are we going to report on the data that's stored there? So we have selected Snowflake with Microsoft Azure as the storage platform, with Snowflake as the management of the data warehouse implementation and the engine that drives things for us, with another ETL solution in the middle. And then ultimately working with that national aggregator that collects data for practically every individual consumer across the United States, as well as corporate information and identification. We're using our data set to send out to that national aggregator so that they can review it and bounce it up against their data for the purposes of returning to us a unique ID that gives us the ability to then deduplicate within our systems, because we would not have a way of knowing if, I'll use myself, if Chad Kersey had a home in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and he also had a home in Chicago, Illinois, we would not have a way of knowing that that Chad Kersey is the same person in both locations. This national aggregator has consumer information and a lot of data that they collect from multiple sources that gives them the ability to track that and know that Chad Kersey in Chicago is the same Chad Kersey that has a home in Chicago and Colorado as well. And so as a result, the data set is basically being normalized, being cleansed, and being deduped through that process of working together with that provider. And then ultimately, our goal is to provide out to our executive leadership, and we've already done this at our territorial levels with various different reporting applications, but we want to be able to bring all of that data together and start reporting from a national perspective with the ability to drill down. And so we've not landed on which provider we're going to choose yet. We're evaluating 3 at this point with Sisense, Tableau, and Power BI, all of which do great things and great work and are very consistent within the types of reports that you can build and dashboards that you can build. And this is not Salvation Army data showing here on the screen. I just want to make that very clear. This is just a sample data set, but I wanted to give you an idea of the types of things that we're wanting to build so that our executive team and our managers and leaders throughout the organization have insight into what's going on within their operational area. And so this is a simple fundraising overview slide that helps us see how are we doing year to date? How many donors do we have? Is it increasing or decreasing? What's the average gift of those donors? Is the donor value increasing over time? Another slide here is just simply looking at maybe a churn chart, an acquisition and retention chart that gives us the ability to see how are we doing in the areas of retaining our donors? How many new donors are we acquiring per unit or per division or per territory? And having the ability to do that over time-based periods with the ability to roll it all the way up at the national level or drill it all the way down to our local individual unit is really important to us, and where we believe we're going to see a lot of value and the ability to make better business decisions as we go forward. Part of this recommendation as well was that we realized, you know what, we're not adequately staffed today to support this. And while we are looking at working directly with that middleware ETL provider to do a lot of the technical lift for us, we also know that we have to maintain it. And one of the discussions that Keith and I have had as we've gone through this process is that we recognize as the Salvation Army how important it is for us to own our strategy and for us to own our data, and to ensure that we are managing that process in a way that is consistent and aligns with the rules and the business objectives that we have as an organization. So we are recommending that each of the territories make an investment in a couple of positions. Some territories already have a data engineer on staff. Other territories do not. And so it may be that one territory needs to hire a business analyst and another territory needs to hire that data engineer. And so we're leaving that up to the territories to make the decision as to what type of position is needed within each of their roles. But we're requesting as part of our project implementation that 2 positions be added. We're also looking at adding an oversight role for the data warehouse and kind of the project management side of this, just ongoing, of how do we maintain once we get the solution fully implemented and in place with all of the different pieces with Snowflake and the middleware that is the ETL tool and the reporting and the analytics side. We need someone that's just helping to give guidance to it. And as part of our committee will not continue in perpetuity, but we do believe that out of this, that we need to establish a data governance team that will continue and that will ensure data integrity, that will make sure that we have a solid data dictionary and good definitions around the data that we're collecting and what the reporting standards are and who and how data is, who consumes and how data is used throughout the organization. So we're very excited about the opportunity that we have. We're looking forward to the gains and the additional benefits. And here's just a few of the benefits that we're expecting as we implement this solution and kind of finalize out this approach, is that we anticipate having a comprehensive data set across the United States of all of our donors and the information that is there. We also believe that this solution provides scalability for us. So as we identify other areas of the organization that maybe don't exist in our CRMs today, we have the ability to add it in, run it through the ETL process, put it into the data lake, and ultimately integrate that into either data warehouse, data marts, whatever's needed for the solution as we build out those requirements of additional things that may be coming in, or new programs or new opportunities that exist. It also gives us the ability to set up a model that internationally we could potentially explore Canada, Our Canadian office may have interest in utilizing some of this resource and those kinds of things. So it just gives us the ability to scale as we need organizationally. We've done some analysis and we do believe there's going to be a significant increase in revenue just from the ways in which we can engage with our donors, the way in which we communicate across multiple channels with them, and the ways in which we collaborate together to be more effective in the way that we target and market to our constituency. Improved reporting, we've already talked about. Regulatory compliance, we believe will be improved, and the ability to stay consistent and up to date with whatever laws are put in place. And then improving the integrity of our data. We've already seen significant gains here from the types of things we've been doing at the territorial levels. We're now excited to do that at the national level. And then obviously operational efficiency will continue to improve as we go, with ultimately the donor experience being high quality and the donor feeling cared for and supported, and that their funds are being used wisely. We have a couple of resources that you have access to and a link there. Keith and I had also provided out our email addresses. If you have questions or anything, please feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to discuss. And Keith, anything you'd like to add?
You know, Chad, I just, again, I think you have a great story. Especially appreciate you sharing it in the middle of it. You know, I think we should open it up for questions.
Yeah, that's great.
Wonderful.
Maybe Kaya, do you have,
Yes.
do we have some questions?
We do. I'll start with you, Keith. Give Chad a little break here for a second. We had one about the user stories. Approaching this using user stories is great, but how do you manage the number of different user stories you are generating so that they are useful and you can then build the minimum requirements?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you for that question. I can tell you, how do we manage them? We have a database. So we enter every user story into the system. But of course, the tool is not what's important. What's important is user stories are then prioritized. Right? And they're prioritized by the importance of those user stories and sequencing in terms of the order in which they should be addressed, which is usually, you know, based on what's mission critical. So if we look at a you know, function like the fundraising back office, you know, we know that we can prioritize, let's say, the efficient and timely acknowledgement of a donor's contribution over, you know, how do we process how does the system process a pledge payment that was paid off with stock? You know, so and of course we aren't the ones solely naming those priorities. We're walking the client through that process. So at the end, the goal is that the user stories have been prioritized by the client team, and it becomes clear this is what is most important and needs to go first, and these other things are second, third, fourth, fifth on the you know, in the layers. And it's part of what that process does is it contextualizes everybody's wish list. So what's really important to me may not be as important in the overall picture, and it's important that I get exposed to that overall picture so that I understand why my needs may not be coming, you know, may not be at the top when we go through the RFP process. So that's both got a practical element to it and it has a change management element to it.
Great, thanks, Keith. One for you, Chad. Is this strategy expanding to include the rest of the countries?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is something that we are exploring. We want to get it in place fully and be at a point of showing its value before we begin to expand too much. But I have already had conversations with other country representatives that are interested in the model that's been put in place here and either utilizing it directly and scaling this solution or potentially developing off of this model a solution of their own that is basically using the same principles and technology based on the groundwork and foundation that we've already laid through this process. So there's a couple of options for us. We haven't talked about doing it globally yet, but I believe once we get this to a point where it's proven and we see the value, I believe that others will be willing to participate and come along on the journey with us.
And if I can make a note about that, Chad, I really appreciated the approach y'all have taken, because you're not saying to people, you have to follow what we're doing. But by providing a clear map of where you're going, when people go to make their choices, it's a lot easier, first of all, to choose what you've already chosen because you've done all this hard work around it. And also, and at the very least, to choose something that dovetails, that works with, rather than to be off in a silo and choosing things now that in 2, 3, 4 years won't play well with the systems that you're choosing. I would make a note to all of us at a bigger picture that, a decade ago, it was even more important that disparate parts of an organization choose the same software vendor. There's more flexibility available now because of the advances in data warehouse technology, and advances not just in what the technology can do, but the price is coming down. So tying together different solutions and the data from those solutions is a lot easier than it used to be. Now, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's not a total, you're not, anyway, there's more possibilities. I'll leave it at that.
And then I think we might have time for one more. Is the timeline you expected at the beginning of this process close to the anticipated finish line, or has it moved significantly over time and understanding of the challenges?
Yeah, so at the outset of this, our leadership team, when they commissioned our committee to begin this work, they asked us to have it completed within a 3-year timeline. And so we are coming up on 20 months into the project at this point with all of the analysis and everything that's there. We believe that there is going to be about a 8 to 10 month implementation timeline with this. So given our approval processes and the way in which organizationally we have to manage and move things through, we still believe that we're right on target and right in line with the original expectations of that 3-year goal. And so that has been great. And we've been able to maintain consistently within our defined budget and parameters that were defined there as well. So that has been great.
Yeah, a couple comments about that too. I think you all have done a great job. First of all, in establishing an initial timeline that gave you enough time. Mm-hmm. Right. What we see, unfortunately, a lot of folks come to us and they say, yeah, so we have a 3-year timeline too. We're at the beginning of year 3. And I said, what have you done? Well, we decided to come work with you. So you've covered a lot of ground, in that timeline. And it's, I would note, many of you may have noticed, oh, wait a minute, it's a 36-month timeline. Planning took up half of it. Yes. Yeah. Good planning takes time. They say in carpentry, measure twice, cut once. Right. And the more time you spend in the planning process, not in analysis paralysis, but a thoughtful process, then it makes the implementation go a lot faster. And that's both from a technology standpoint and again from change management. If you try to make people move too quickly, they will dig in their heels and your timeline will slow down a lot. So I just want to applaud you, Chad, on the way you've managed the timeline.
Well, thank you for that, Keith. All right, well, Madeline, we will turn it back over to you. I see that we're close to time here, and I'll let you give any closing comments that you'd like.
Thank you, Chad. And thank you, Chad and Keith, for such a great presentation, really timely and relevant about the digital transformation journey that the Salvation Army has been on with the help of Heller Consulting as well. I can see from the chat window that our audience has been really appreciating you sharing that story. So a final wrap up, thank you all for your time in attending this session. Please do take a moment to complete our webinar satisfaction survey. We really appreciate your input. Also, do look out for an email later today or tomorrow that will have a link to the recording and resources that Chad and Keith provided, as well as their email addresses if you didn't catch those from Chad's slide. And with that, I'll say thanks again and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.